All right, so welcome again. We are going to jump right on into lesson 6. Again, the semester is flying by, and we need to be mindful of that. So let's go to our modules page, and let's before we begin learning some new concepts for today, let's take a look at our pacing schedule, right? The calendar, the course calendar. Let's make sure that we idea of where we are in the semester. You just turned in lesson 5, right? Last night, and we are moving on, pressing forward to lesson 6. We see that homecoming, right? Happy homecoming week. Okay, it begins or already began, right? Began this weekend, but it's definitely going to bring up for the week. We don't have any assignments that are due this week. Let's look forward into November. We see that your next assignment is not due until the 10th, so 10th of November. So please be mindful of that, and keep that that date on your calendar. All right. So what are we going to do? So you can, of course, follow along with me on the lecture notes. I'll be using some of the notes, not, of course, not directly, but indirectly. You can follow along in your notes. So here's what I'm going to do. Let's open up our programming environment again of your choice. I'm using IntelliJ per usual, and I'm going to go up and we're going to start a new project, right? A new project. This is going to be our lesson 6. You can follow along. I don't know if you're doing the same, but this is lesson 6 project. And I'm going to make sure that that add sample code is unchecked. And I'm going to keep everything else the same. Let's go ahead and create. I'm going to save this window, and we now have a new working area. Let's go ahead and on our source file, I'm going to go ahead and create a new file for my notes. Right, so lesson 6 notes. All right. So what in the world are we going to be talking about for lesson 6? So lesson 6 deals with arrays. Arrays. Now, how many of y'all have heard of arrays? Thumbs up. Let's see. Heard of arrays? Okay, great. And it's okay if you haven't. It's okay if you haven't. Again, that's what I'm here for. Okay. So, what in the world are arrays? Anybody want to take a stab? What are arrays? So, what are arrays? I want to take a stab at that definition. What do you think? Summarize it or put it in your own words. What do you think an array is? What is an array? Table of information. Okay. Okay. With multiple things, right? Very good. A list of values. Yes. All good stuff. Absolutely. So a list that contains some information, some values. Very good. So here, and again, you can follow along in your lecture notes. Again, I have these lecture notes for your sake, so that you can look at them later for sure. But what in the world is an array? An array, it is an object. First of all, let me just state that first. It is an object. I'm going to actually make sure it is in all caps. It's an object. Okay, just like the scanner class is, so it's an object that does what? That helps store large, and I'll say large amounts, and that's relative, large amounts of information. That's an object that allows us to store information. It is ordered. So another thing about arrays, it is an ordered collection. Okay, collection. That's another thing. Collection of one or more values or elements from the same domain. I'm capitalizing that as well because that's also important. So what do I mean? First of all, when I say domain, domain just simply means data type. Okay. So that's very important. So let's pause with this definition first. So it is an object, right? First of all, that stores large amounts of, and I say large, just stores information, right? But it gives you an object so that you can store information in. It's an ordered. I like that too. So let me go ahead and do this in all caps as well. Ordered is very important. An ordered collection. We're going to talk about what does it mean by ordered and how do we make it ordered, right? But it's an ordered collection of one or more values or elements. These are some keywords that we're going to be using from the same domain of the same data type. They must all be from the same data type. Okay, very important. And so when we think of an array, so an array is a Java class that contains methods, of course, and properties, just like the scanner class, just like the string class, just like the character class, right? So there is an array class, right? Java class that's already pre-written for us. And so the beauty of Java is that there are these pre-written classes that we have available to us. And in these Java classes, they make available these methods and properties that we have access to as well. And these methods and properties are usually very common methods, common activities that are associated with an array. They've simplified those activities. They've written the code for us. So for instance, like if I wanted to find the length of an array, if I wanted to locate an array, like order an array, there are certain activities or things that we like to perform on arrays, basic things. And so the pre-written Java classes that are associated with the array. We're going to look at a handful of them in lesson 6, and you're going to use a few of them to access elements in your array. All right, so this, and we'll, of course, we'll add to this definition. We'll learn about some other terms and symbols as it relates to arrays. Let me bring to you this idea. Okay, so what is the justification for using arrays? Let me pose this question to you. What's the justification of using array? So let me ask you this. Can we do the following? Can we do this? Can we save the following? If I say int age equals, let's say 23, 44, 1, 33, let's say 50. Can I do this? Is this possible? If I wanted to assign more than one value to this variable called age, can I do this? Is this allowed? That's the question I'm posing to you all. Is this allowed? You can unmute yourselves. You can put it in the chat. Is this allowed? Okay. So River, you say no. Jackson, you say no. So why do you all think that this is not allowed? Why? Why do you think this is a no? Int can only store one integer. Absolutely. High five. Yes, absolutely, River. Is that you can only store. So this is not allowed. Not allowed. Okay. We can only store one value, right, in an integer variable, right, in an integer, right. And why is that, right? So if we wanted to do that, what we need to do. So we can only store one value in an integer variable. So what do we need to do? If we wanted to assign more than one value to a single variable, we would need to create an array to do that. We would need to create an array of integers, right? An array that contains integers. So we would need to create an array that contains one or more integers. Right? That is the answer. That's the solution. Because otherwise, if you attempt to do this, you're going to get an error. You're going to get an error. And so what we would want to do, and I'll show you, I'll demonstrate what that would look like, the correct way to initialize an array variable. But this is not, okay? So this is not allowed to do. And so here, what I'd like for you to be mindful of, we're going to look at various symbols, okay, symbols. And so some of the symbols that we're going to take a look at, for instance, are the open and close bracket. You're going to see this symbol, the open and close bracket. We've seen the open and close bracket perhaps in other, in other statements that we've written. But yes, when we're talking about arrays, the open and close bracket, what does that mean? This means that we're declaring an array. That means we're declaring an array. Those brackets also allow us to reference a specific element in an array, okay? So anytime we see those brackets help us declare an array. They also allow us to reference or access a specific element in the array. So when I say reference, that simply means access, okay? Access or reference a specific element that's in an array. You will also see perhaps the open and close curly braces. The open and close curly braces. So when would we use the open and close curly braces? When using them with arrays, we use the open and close curly braces to define the elements that are in the array, right? That are in the array or in an array. And so again, I'll demonstrate these things today for sure. So today, because we're on schedule and on task, I am going to let you out a little early. I know I owe you some minutes anyway, but I just want to make sure that I at least introduce arrays to you today, and we'll demonstrate them with a simple program, and then we'll get out of here today. But again, basic things. So some of the terminology. So those are some of the symbols you need to be mindful of. What about terminology? Terminology, we want to be mindful of the following term, and you've seen it already, but elements is one thing that I want you to be mindful of. What is an element? Okay, an element. Okay, so an element, right? What are elements? Elements are, they represent, it represents the values that are stored in the array. Okay, so whenever you hear me say the word elements, that just simply means values, right? Those are the values that are stored in the array. So an element, an element. Another term that we also may run across when we're talking about arrays is what we call the index. And again, this is not a new term. This is not a new term, not a new term. You've seen this term before. We talked about indexes. Tell me where we've talked about an index from. Where have we talked about an index? Someone remind me. Where have we heard that word index before? Where have we talked about an index before? We've seen index before. All right, I need you all to, you don't have your mics on, so I need you all to participate like none other in the chat and or unmute yourselves. I need class participation. Or we'll sit here and we'll look at each other. Come on. Are you with me today? And more than just the one or two people that I know that always respond, I need to hear you responses. So where have we heard of an index before? Is my audio working or is the video working? So an index, loops, we've They can be associated with loops in a sense, but strings definitely. We've talked about it with respect to strings and characters that are in strings, right? Yes, so it's not a new term. We used an index to refer to each character in a string, right? In a string, right? So the same idea applies here. Remember, even when we went over what an index was, as we were in the chapter, the lesson that talked about strings and characters, I mentioned to you that we're going to talk about an index even when we get to lesson 6, where we talk about arrays. So it's the same idea. So what do we know about an index? An index is how the computer, right? The computer counts. Do you all recall that? And we know that a computer always starting at 0. Do y'all recall that? We know that this is how an index is how computers count. And so we know that humans count starting at 1, right? So which is 1 less than how humans count. Do y'all recall? Okay, we start at 1. Just putting that in there for your reference. Okay, so indexes are how humans count. Indexes are how computers count. Humans count one count starting at 1. Okay, so please be mindful of that. And so when we think of an index, the index we use an index to reference an element in an array. So this is what we mean by ordered. So this is what we mean by, I'm going to put here, I'm going to say ... This is what we mean by an ordered collection of elements. Okay, that's what we mean by an ordered collection of elements. It's because we reference each element by its index, its location. So think of it also to its an elements as an elements location within an array. Okay, so please be mindful of these definitions of what I mean by an index. An index is its location, an element's location, or a value's location within an array. Okay, so let me explain. Let's describe this. So let's say here's an example. What do I mean by that? Let's say that we have this variable called days of week. Okay, days of week. We have this variable called days of week. Hold on just a second. Let me move this screen out of the way. Okay, so I have this variable called days of the week. Let's assume that I do the following, and we're going to get familiar. You're going to get used to these symbols and terms, right? So here's how we would specify and assign more than one value or elements to a single array. So we would say days of the week equals, but we have to put the curly braces around the elements that are contained in the array. So this is an array of strings. So what do I have here? I will have Monday. Okay, and we've not declared the array or anything. I'm just showing you how we would reference an element in an array. So here, let's say Tuesday, which is today, Wednesday, right? Let's just say we have these elements here, okay? All right, something like that. Notice the symbols that I'm using, right? Notice the symbols that I'm using. Let's add another symbol to our list here, the comma, okay? The comma is used, comma is used to separate elements in the array list. Okay, just FYI, we use commas to separate our arrays, our elements within an array list. What else do you see here? We notice that I have double quotes around strings, right? So again, what do I want to show you here in this example? And again, we'll learn more about how to define arrays and declare and initialize arrays. We'll talk about that. But here, this is an example of what we mean by our index, right? Our index. So what do we know? The first element in this array, this collection, the first element is Monday. The string Monday is the first element in this array. The second element in this array is Tuesday. The third element in this array is Wednesday. Do you see, though, that how I stated it versus how I wrote it? As I was typing, I was typing the index, but this is how humans count. Humans count using, of course, one more than how computers count. Okay, can't emphasize that enough. Don't give me points on your next exam because you did not start it at the right place, right? 1, 2. Oh, what did I do there? Sorry. Get carried away there. All right, does everybody see how this works? Okay. So this is how indexes count. I mean, how the computer counts. This is how humans count. Okay, so let's be mindful of that. Okay. That's the computer. This is versus the human. And so we know that this is the first element, all right? This is the second element. And this is the third. Any questions so far before we move on to some new stuff? Any questions for me so far, everybody? Thumbs up if you're following along so far. Nothing too complex about this stuff. We got this. All right. Very good. All right. Awesome sauce. So elements index, let's also talk about another term before we introduce how to declare and initialize and all of that kind of thing. Another term that I'd like for you to be mindful of, there's this property, right? Remember I told you that an array is an object, right? And there's also it represents a Java class. It's a Java class that contains methods and properties. A Java class that contains methods and properties. Well, one of the properties that is associated with the array class is the property called length. Remember, properties don't have open and close parentheses after it. Methods do. You're going to learn other methods or some methods that belong to the array class in this lesson, but you're also going to learn a few properties that are associated. And properties are nothing more than characteristics, things that that help us describe an array class, right? And so here, this is a property that belongs to the array class, okay? And so what does this property help us do? Anytime an array is created, a value is assigned to this property automatically, assigned to this property called length. Okay, and so this is what we what do we know that the length represents? It specifies the number of elements in the array. Okay, so FYI, anytime we say the length of array, we're counting like humans, Let's put that here. Count like humans, not computers. Okay, so when we think of length, it's as if humans were counting starting at 1. Okay, starting at 1. All right. No, if there are no other questions, any questions for me so far? Questions or concerns for me so far? Hopefully all of this makes sense. Does me typing this out, I know we don't have a board. Again, all of this in the notes like this, is this helpful? Okay, helping you to follow along. I hope it is. All right, and you can see everything clearly. It's not too small. All right. All right, so here, with that being said, I don't have any objections, so let's go ahead and let's talk about this first. We're going to talk about today. So today we're going to talk about how to declare and also how to initialize, and then we'll get out of here. So how do we declare an array? Let's talk about it. We're going to talk about it, we're going to do it. And then we're going to talk about how to initialize or populate an array. Those are the two things we're going to talk about before we get out of here today. How do we declare? And there's several ways to do this. There's several ways to do this. It just depends on, a lot of times it depends on the problem that you are working on, but there are many ways to do this, okay? And I'll show you a few, but there are more than, there are several ways to declare an array, just FYI. One way here, so option number one, here's one option. And how do we go about declaring an array? So what we would do first is we would say the array data type would go first out in front. Then we would have the open and close bracket, and then the array name. And then what always follows that is our assignment operator, and then our keyword new, and then the array data type again. Again, you got to repeat that. And then the brackets, and inside the brackets is the array size, followed by a closing curly brace. So this is option one. Again, there's more than one way to declare an array, but this is one way. One way. I will give you an example of that, I promise. So when we say array size, you all, let me just specify this. Array size means the following. It means how many values to expect at most. And I want to put that in parentheses there. So when we say array size, it does not mean it does not mean including that ending value. So if I say here my array size, if I tell the computer, hey computer, expect up to if I expect 10, that means up to 10. Okay, if I assign my size to 10, then that means up to 10, not including 10, up to 10 values you should expect. Okay, so with that being said, let's look at an example. Here's how we would, using this first option, here's how we would declare an array. So let's say we have this array called days of week, like we did above. It's what are the data types of the values or elements that are going to be stored in the array? That's the data type. That's what we mean by the array data type. So because my array is going to contain the string values Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? Those are strings. So that's my array data type. There's my open and close bracket. And what always follows the open and close bracket is the name that I give my array. That's the variable name, the variable name, right? And so here my variable or my array name is going to be days of week. Okay. And here's how I would complete the declaration of the array. We would use the new keyword, reserved word. What always follows the keyword new is the data type again. Repeat the data type again, and the array size. I'm going to say the size is 7. Now that 7 means index. So I'm starting at the 0 index all the way up to, but not including that 7th index, right? Because we're starting at 0, it's going to go all the way up to the last valid value of the elements in my array for days of the week is going to be in 6, the last valid index, right? That's pointing to a value. It's going to be where the element is, array element is 6. So this is how we would declare. This is one option, everyone. One option. Another option is very similar. Watch what I'm going to do. I'm literally going to I'm going to copy and paste this first option because it's so similar. Very similar. Here's the second option. I'm just going to modify a few things here. The second option is just we move the open and close bracket. We put it after the array name. You can do this. That's the second option, leaving everything on the right-hand side the same of the assignment operator. And so again, not much change here, but but putting our open and close brackets behind the name of the array. This is also allowed, right, to declare. So notice the difference. The bracket, all right, on the left-hand side of the assignment operator can be in front of the array name or after the array name. It does not matter. Okay, you'll normally see me put it, use the first option, which you see highlighted. You'll normally see me use this approach. All right, so with that being said, so let's look at the syntax for initializing, and then we're going to write a simple program, okay? So here, how would we go about initializing an array? There's several options, yet again. So here's option number one, okay? And we have another option in just a second. So here, option number one, we would do the following. Option number one, we would say for initializing, meaning populating the array, putting values in the array. We would say the array name, okay? The array name would go out front and of the assignment operator. And what would follow, open and close bracket, right? Semicolon, what goes inside are the values. So value 1, separated by a comma, value 2, separated by a comma, value 3, separated by a comma, and dot, 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 dot. Okay? So this is how we would initialize. One approach to initializing, meaning putting values. If we use this first approach, that means we must have declared the array separately, somewhere above. We've got to declare the array somewhere above before we actually start putting values in the array, just like we would for a simple variable. So we would have to declare the variable. So for instance, a string a string variable. And then later in the program, we would then assign a string literal or whatever to that string variable. You have to declare the array before you can populate it, unless you use the second option. And the second option looks like the following. The second option looks like this. Here we have our data type. Then we would have our open and close bracket, and then we would have our array name, right? An array name. And then we would have our assignment operator and our open and close curly brace, right? With our values in there. Values 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever are going to be in there. So it would look something like this, okay? Something like this. And again, it's just a mixture. And again, you know, there's option 3 as well, where the brackets are behind, right? Option 3, where the values are behind, or that open and close brackets are behind, right? Option 3. So none of, you know, nothing too spectacular or extremely different there. So either one of those. So what's the difference between option 2 and option 3? We're declaring. So let me give you an example of what that would look like. So here's an example. We would say days of week. I'm sorry. Let's do the following. Here's an example of the first option, I should say. Let's use an example of the first option, where we have an array name. So we would say days of week. And I would then use my assignment operator with my curly braces. Sorry about that. My curly braces. And each value, right, enclosed in double quotes. Okay, closing curly brace. Okay, so that's option 1. This is how I'm declaring, I'm sorry, not declaring, initializing or populating my array, right? That's the first option. The second option here is where I'm declaring and initializing in one step. So when would I use this one? If you already know, so you would use this one when we know, use this when we know the values to initialize the array at the time we are declaring the array. Okay, you would just use it if you know it, you know the values at the time. If you don't know the values at the time you're declaring the array, then we would use the above options just to declare the array up front, and we'll populate the array later in the program, right? And so there are many ways to declare and initialize. It depends on the problem that you are looking at. And so let's look at an example of this approach. An example of this approach is where we would have the following, right? String, there's my open and close bracket, days of week equals, and then there's my values. I could just simply, whatever is on the right-hand side of my assignment operator, I can do that on the left, whatever's on the right side above, I can copy it down here. So this is where we're declaring and initializing, right? Declaring and initializing the array in one step. So declaring and initializing the array in one statement. Okay, that is what that looks like. And sometimes this is not possible because you don't know the values of the in that need to be stored in the array at the time you're declaring it. So sometimes this is option 2 and 3 are not you're not able to do that. All right, but again, no worries, you have options. Any other questions, any questions or concerns? We have another option. I know y'all are tired, but again, look, I want to show you as many options as possible because again, you may, I mean, it depends on the problem that you're working with, but also you may be looking at some existing code and you need to know how to trace through that code for understanding. So another option would be to store the various elements or values in the array one at a time. So for instance, I could do the following. I could say the following. I could say days of a week. I'm gonna simplify this a little bit by just setting it up first. And so if I do this, I'm gonna do this multiple times. Watch what I'm gonna do. Let's say that I do the following. So days of the week at 0, right? If I initialize it to Monday, right? Monday. So this is an example of me declaring one element at a time, storing one element at a time. And you can do this as well. It depends on the problem that you're working on, right? And how you want to approach this. Okay? Again, options. My job, I'm your Vanna White. I am just showing you the tools you have in your tool belt, and it's up to you, the coder, the programmer, the artist, because that's what we are, right? Programmers are artists. It's up to you to design your masterpiece, right? And so I'm just here to describe to you and show you the tools that you have in your tool belt. All right. So yet again, these are options. You can even overwrite values, and I'll just demonstrate this in a programming exercise in just a second. But we can even override elements that are already stored in an array. So we can overwrite elements or values in the array. We can do that by doing the following. We could say something like this. You see what I did to the above? I initialized my days of the week at, and this is how we say this in English, everybody. Let's say, I'm going to put this in saying. So in English, we would say the following. We would say, let's do it this way. Sorry. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to put my comment here. In English, we would say days of week at 0 is Monday. Does everybody see what I just said? So how would how is this code said in English? We would say days of the week, right? Days of week at 0, right? So with the brackets, we always interpret those brackets with the word at. So at 0, at the 0 index, right? At the 0 index is Monday. Okay. So with that being said, how would we overwrite? Let's say that I wanted another value there. Let's say Saturday is, I want to replace that. I want to overwrite it in memory because currently in memory, the string Monday is there. How would I overwrite that value in memory? We would simply do the following, just like we would with any variable. We would retrieve that variable, right? Specify the index that we want to overwrite, and then we would simply assign it to a new string, okay? To a new string. So now the string Saturday is stored at the 0 index for days of week array, okay? So again, just today's discussion is just getting you used to the terminology, getting you used to the symbols, getting you familiar with how to declare an array, getting you familiar with how to populate or initialize an array. We're going to talk about, not today, on Thursday's class, we're going to talk about how to populate an array on the fly. Well, when I say on the fly, in an interactive approach where we engage our user, and our user is going to help us populate an array. We'll talk about how that's done. Okay. So what in the world? Let's do the following. Let's take a peek at the following. Let's do this. Hold on just a second. So let's do a simple little problem here together. Right click on your source file or create a new Java class, whatever programming environment that you are using. I'm going to call this program types of cars. Types of cars. And then go ahead and push the enter key. Let's go ahead and create our main method. Main, and then we're going to tab there. And then don't forget to comment your closing curly braces. So this is the end of main, and this is the end of the class itself. All right, thumbs up if you're with me. You have what I have. We're all ready to rock and roll. Awesome, awesome sauce. Very good. All right, let's talk about the purpose. What's going to be the purpose of this exercise? The purpose of this exercise is to demonstrate how to declare and initialize a collection of types of cars, which are strings. Okay. Okay, we're going to declare and initialize a collection, more importantly, right? It just happens to be types of cars, but we can do this with integers, we can do this with chars, we can do this with any data type. My collection happens to be strings, but it does not have to be, right? And so we'll look at some other examples of where the data type is something other than a string. But here, we're going to declare. I want us to declare and initialize our array. So we're going to declare and initialize an array of cars. Okay, that's what I want to do. And then next I want us to print our favorite car to the screen. Okay, and then we'll talk about some other activities after that. All right, just demonstrating how to declare, initialize array, how to access elements in the array. That's what this exercise is for. So how do we declare an array of cars, collection of cars? These are string elements, values. So my data type goes out in front. It is a string, and it is an array. So my open and close bracket. Then what is the name of this array? I'm going to call it cars. And on the right-hand side of my assignment operator, I'm going to explicitly define my string literals, my elements, right, that are in this string array. And so here, you can put whatever cars you want there. I'm going to put maybe Ford as my first car. Let's see here. My second car, maybe I'm going to say a GMC. Maybe my second, my third, next car, my third car here, I'm going to say maybe a Dodge, right? Dodge. Okay, and maybe my next one is a Cadillac. And then I'll use maybe another one here, maybe an Altima. Okay. Something of that nature. We'll do something like that. Okay. Now, with that being said, what in the world do we so when we say declare and initialize, I hope that you can see what I mean by declare and initialize, right? Give me just a second. I apologize. Okay. Yes. Okay. So with that being said, I hope that you can see that here in this example, we are declaring our variable there. We are declaring it as this string of a collection of strings here, and then we're associating it with the variable called cars, with the variable called cars. So with that being said, let's print our favorite car to the screen. Here in some system.out print line statement. I set it up first. I'm going to say, for this example, I'm going to say that the Cadillac is my favorite. Okay, the Cadillac. So how, and let's put a little string here first. My favorite car is, and I'm going to say, let's say, is a, okay, something of this nature. Now, if I wanted to say that my favorite car was a Cadillac, given the string that the collection of strings that I've given, someone help me. What is the code that I would need in order to say that Cadillac was my favorite car? Sorry. How would I say that the Cadillac is my favorite car? In the chat, if you would, please, or mute yourselves, whatever you feel comfortable with.
You'd use car array brackets and then the number you want to use.
Okay, so
In this case, it's your fourth thing in the array. So that's going to be index 3.
Okay.
So you put in the square brackets 3. So
Absolutely.
cars, square brackets 3.
Very good. So given that, very good, Anthony, let's test it. Let's make sure that given this input, do I get the expected output, right? So if I run this program where we are right now, and it's running, it's coming. So my favorite car is Cadillac. High five, Anthony. Very good. So the name of the array, bracket. Now, why do we need bracket? If you recall in my notes, we use brackets to declare, but we also use brackets to, and let me put that in a whole separate line here, because that's on another reason. We use brackets to declare an array, but we also use brackets to reference or access a specific element in the array. So these brackets are used for more than one thing. They're used to declare an array, but they're also used to access or retrieve a specific element in the array. And so that's why you see cars, the name of the array, bracket, and in what goes inside is the index. Let me do this in our notes here. When I say allows us to reference an element in the array, I'm going to put an example in our notes here. So I would say cars at 3, right? That's what I mean by it allows us to reference or access a specific element in an array. So what is the notation we would use? We would use array name, right? Then open and close bracket with the index, right? Specific index. It's going to go inside of the bracket, right? Inside of the bracket. That is how we reference an array. The array name, and then brackets, the specific index. So I hope that makes sense. Any questions about that? All right. If not, here's what I want us to do, you all. Let's replace GMC with Ford. I'm sorry, not with Ford, with Toyota. If I did that, let's replace GMC, that car, with Toyota. Okay, with the car Toyota. Put in the chat for me, please. What would I do? What is the line of code that I would use to change or overwrite GMC with Toyota? I'll wait on you. What is that code? I need some new faces, some new brave souls. Go ahead, and if it's wrong, we'll fix it. What is the line of code that I would use to replace in memory? And let me put that in, make that very clear. Replace in memory. GMC with Toyota. Crickets, refer to your notes. Refer to your notes. If you want to get out of here early today, come on. Refer to your notes. I demonstrated this in your notes. Okay, I'm going to call on someone. All right. If no one's going to say, Nick, you want to help us out here? Nick, do you have an idea? Or Devin? Any ideas on how we would, what is the line of code? Jackson? Anybody? Or Dania? I'm going to wait on you all because you do have everything you need. You know how to do this. What would I do? It's, you know, you're going to need the assignment operator. What would I need to say in order to replace cars at 3 equals Toyota Victoria? Okay, so you want, we're trying to replace GMC, right, with Toyota. And so is that the correct? You're almost correct. You're almost, and again, what do we say? Try. We'll fix it. I love it. I appreciate you doing this. So you're saying it's 1 instead of 2. Absolutely. Very good. Excellent. High five there, Victoria. Very good. Car, we'll fix it. If you're going to mess up, do it here together. Okay, so cars at 1, right? Because GMC is the second element in the array. We want to replace it, the index of the one we want to replace is where the index is 1. So very good. So we'll say car at 1 equals, and then the new string, Toyota. Very good. So let's prove it to ourselves. Let's test that. Let's print. Let's print. All right, print the new car. All right, print the new car to the screen. I have the retainer in my mouth, so sometimes it's a little, I get a little tongue-tied. All right, so here, what is that going to be? So here, the replace, so the new car, let's indicate the new car is, what? How do I state that? I'm simply going to say cars at 1. Let me prove to you that we've actually replaced it, because we're going to go to memory and we're going to fetch the car at the 1 index. And so let's see if it truly overwrote what the existing car was. So yes, it is. The new car is Toyota. So what I've done is proven to you that we've updated memory. So when we say replace in memory, we're updating the current value. So GMC is no longer stored in memory for the cars array. Toyota is now there. Okay, very good. One last example here, and then we're going to get out of here. What if I wanted to know the length of the array? I'm going to print. Let's print the length of the cars array. Put in the chat, what do you think that's going to be inside of my print statement, please? I want to print the length of the array. Put in the chat the code that you would add to this statement. The length of the array, the cars array, is, what would I need to type right here after my concatenation symbol. How do I print the length of the array? The length of the array. The computer already knows what the length is because certain values were set. When I declared this array right here and I initialized it, the computer automatically set this property called length, right? That property called length is given a value because of this, right? The length value is determined. Is set automatically when we do this. When we assign it string literals like this, the computer will automatically know what the length property is, the value that's assigned to the length property, right? And so how do we do this? You can say cars, watch this, cars dot. Do you notice that when I do that dot is an access operator, and the computer already knows, right? Remember this IDE, this integrated development environment already knows the properties and the methods that belong to the array class. And you see that dot will demonstrate, right? Will bring up all of the methods and all of these properties that belong to that the cars array has access to. And one of those properties is the length property. And it does not have open and close parentheses behind it because it is a property, not a method. Methods have open and close parentheses behind it. Methods do things. Properties describe things. And so if I do this, run this code as you see right now, you'll see that there are 5 elements in this array, right? 5 elements in the array. We can count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can count them. Thumbs up if you understood what we went over today. Any questions or concerns about what we've gone over today? If you do have a class reflection, it is very quick and easy peasy. I'm going to give it to you right now. Give me just a second and I'll make it available. It does not take long. It won't take you long at all, but give me just a second so that I can bring it up and give you that code for it. Here's the code for it right now. Okay, here's the code for it. Sorry. I have too many screens open and I'm trying to get out of this. Hold on just a second. Just a second. You see the class reflection? That's okay. All right, so there, you should see it. You should see it. Let me save it. Here's the code you can see on the screen, and I'll also place it in the chat. Hopefully you see it. Do you see that?
That's the wrong code. That's for the
Oh,
last one.
oh, wait. Huh. Today is the 28th. Oh, mercy. Let me bring that up. I'm sorry. Brought the wrong one. Where is that at? Do you see the code here? Oh, just a second. Got to get myself together here. I've got too many screens open. All right, here it is. This is the one we're looking at right now. Thank you for that. I don't know who's that? Was it Anthony that helped me out
Yep,
there?
that's me.
Thank you for that. All right, here's the code. I'll also place it in your chat as well, if that's helpful. Okay. And after that, you're ready to go. Just 4 simple little questions there. If you have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to hang around. I'm going to stop our recording. I should have.